to Dartner's tutorial series. Our objectives for today are to define anatomy and physiology, to explain the relationships, similarities, and differences between anatomy and physiology, to describe the levels of organization, to elaborate on the characteristics and maintenance of life. What is anatomy? What is physiology? We should know that these two terms are derived from Greek words. Anatomy is derived from two Greek words, which are ana and tomia. Ana means body, morphology, or structures. Tomia means to cut through. To dissect. This means that the structures that you want to study are within the body, and you need to cut through the body to have access to the structures in the body that you want to study. Now we can define anatomy as the scientific study of the structures within the body. But if we want to follow how we explain these two terms, we can say that anatomy is the cutting through the body to have access to the structures for better understanding. That is, you want to understand the structures, the morphology of the body by cutting through, by dissecting, to have more understanding. What is physiology? Physiology is also derived from two words, which is physis and logia. Physis means nature. It means nature. That is how the nature works. For better understanding of the word physis, we can say that physis also means work or function or to use. But logia means study. In that case, we can define physiology as the scientific study of nature in the body. Or we can say that physiology is the scientific study of the function in the body. The function of what? The function of the structures in the body. The scientists who study anatomy are called anatomists. The anatomists study the morphology, the structures of the body. But physiologists are scientists who are dedicated in studying how the structures in the body function. Our next focus would be to explain the relationships that exist between the anatomy and physiology. What differences exist between the anatomy and physiology? We can deduce the differences that exist between the anatomy and physiology in our definitions of them. Anatomy focuses on the morphology or structure of the body. Physiology, on the other hand, focuses on the functions of each structure in the body. Example of structures in the body include the heart, the lungs, kidneys, and whatever organs you can think of. The stomach, etc. But physiology focuses on how this heart works, how the lungs help us to breathe, how the kidneys help to excrete waste products, and how the stomach helps in digestion of food. So, the anatomists, we focus on how these structures look. How does anatomy relate to physiology, and how does physiology relate to anatomy? Like we said, that anatomy deals with the structures in the body, and physiology deals with the functions in the body. It can be said that whatever happens to the structures in the body will affect the functions of the structures in the body. This is a kidney, for instance. These are the two kidneys, for instance. This is the structure of a kidney. But something happens to the kidney, maybe injury or infection happens to the kidney. That means when kidney is injured or when infection affects the kidneys, it will affect the functionality of these kidneys. For instance, the kidney, if anatomist wants to describe kidney, they will say the kidney has two layers. The outer layer, which is the cortex, and the inner layer, which is the medulla. They will just describe how the kidneys look like. But now, the injury has distorted the renal cortex. The injury has affected the medulla, or the injury or infection has caused total damage to the structure of the kidney. This means that how these kidney functions will also be affected. The kidneys will not be able to perform the function of excretion. Physiology can affect anatomy. If you fail to use a particular organ, it will affect the structure of that organ. For example, the muscles, which contract. When muscles contract, the contraction is the physiology, is the function. But now the muscles that are supposed to contract are not contracting because the owner is not making use of it. Because when you use a limb, it causes the muscles of that limb to contract so that you can move that part. But now, the muscles cannot contract. Maybe because of injury or infection or a genetic disorder or maybe autoimmune disease. You will begin to notice that the structures of that muscle will begin to reduce in size, will begin to diminish in size. We call that condition disuse syndrome. Disuse syndrome. This disuse syndrome can lead to atrophy. Atrophy is the decrease in the size of a particular organ or structure in the body as a result of decline in use. You could have heard about cerebral atrophy. The anatomy, deals with the structures. That is the size of a structure, the shape of a structure, the length of that structure. So if the physiology of that structure is affected, it will cause a decrease in size, in shape, or length of that structure. It is also important to know that it is not only injury or disease that affects or that can bring about decline in the structure or function of a part. Aging is also an important factor. As we age, the functions begin to decline. As the functions of structures in the body begin to decline, the size of the structures in the body also follow suit. That is, the size of those structures begin to experience a decline. This is how anatomy and physiology are related. The second topic to deal with is the levels of organization. This concept is telling us that as we move from a lower stage to higher stage, man increases in complexity. We were once in a state of nothingness to a state of something, and as we develop, we increase in complexity. The levels of organization in the body can be likened to how society, how the world is developed. From two parents, man and woman, male and female, coming together to form a family, and family advances to a society, and a society advances to community, community advances to a city, city advances to a state or region, and state advances to a country, and more countries come together to form a world. We can use the same concepts to describe the levels of organizations in the body. Our levels of organization can be described in two ways. We have the chemical level and we have the biological level. We were once in a chemical state, and this chemical level are divided into four. We have subatomic level or subatomic state. From there, we become atoms. From a state of atom, we advance to molecules. From there, we advance to macromolecules. Under the subatomic state, we have the protons, electrons, and neutrons. In chemistry, we were told that we learned that protons are positively charged, the neutrons are neutrally charged, that is, they have no charge, and the electrons are negatively charged. So the protons, electrons, and neutrons come together to form atoms. That is, in each atom, we will have proton, electron, and neutron. So these subatomic particles come together to form atoms. Example of atoms is carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, calcium, magnesium. All these are atoms because in each atom we have a combination of proton, electron, and neutron. What is an atom? Atom is the smallest unit of something, the smallest unit of a matter that cannot be further divided. And these atoms come together, they collaborate, they join together to form molecules. Molecules are formed by two or more atoms. For a molecule to be formed, at least two atoms must come together. For instance, if we have two atoms of oxygen, this is one atom of oxygen, this is another atom of oxygen. Now we have two atoms of oxygen forming oxygen molecule. We have hydrogen atom combining with another hydrogen atom. So these two atoms form hydrogen molecules. That is, for a molecule to be formed, two atoms must unite, must come together. Molecules, two or more molecules, come together to form a larger molecules, which we call the macromolecules. The macromolecules are made up of two or more molecules. Example of this is the DNA, the RNA, proteins, lipids, and carbohydrates. All these are examples of macromolecules, which are formed by the combination of two or more molecules. So these are the chemical level. The chemical level. Now let's talk about the biological level. The biological level starts when organelles begin to form. Organelles are structures, microscopic structures within the cell. These organelles are made up of two or more macromolecules. They are made up of two or more macromolecules. You can see how we are increasing in complexity. Examples of organelles include mitochondria, endoplasmic reticulum, Golgi apparatus, lysosomes, etc. All these are organelles that we can find within the cell. And these organelles are made up of macromolecules. Another example is ribosomes. For example, ribosomes consist of proteins. Ribosomes consist of proteins. It synthesizes proteins. Golgi apparatus contains carbohydrates. What we are seeing here is that organelles are made up of macromolecules. Now, another state under biological level is the cellular level. Cell. That is, after organelles are formed, they come together to form a community known as cell. That is, within the cell, you will find two or more organelles. Two or more cells come together to form tissue. For a tissue to form, cells of the same size, of the same function, must come together to form a tissue. We have different types of tissue. We have epithelial tissue that lines the inner layer of organs and that covers our skin. We also have connective tissue. Connective tissues helps to connect different tissues in the body, different organs in the body together. Example is the cartilage, bones, and we also have muscle tissue. The nervous tissues. So these are the types of tissues that we have in the body. But don't forget that for a tissue to form, the cells forming the tissue must be the same, must look alike, must have the same functions. Two or more tissues. Let's say this is a tissue. Let's say this is a unit of a tissue. This is another unit of tissues. And this is another unit of tissues. So, two or more tissues of different sizes, different shape, different function from organs. From organs. Two or more tissues of different functions, different shape, different sizes from organ. So this is organ. You know, for a tissue to form, the cells must come together, but these cells must be the same, must have the same function, must appear the same. But for a tissue to form, two or more tissues must come together, and these tissues must be different in shape, in functions. Example of a tissue of an organ is stomach. Inside the stomach, you will find a combinations of all these tissues in the stomach. For example, the inner layer of stomach is made up of epithelial tissues. The middle layer of the stomach is made up of muscle tissues. Stomach also contains nervous tissues. So what we're saying here is that an organ is a combination of tissues that are different in functions. For instance, the epithelial tissue in the stomach lines the inner part of the stomach, and it is involved in the production of mucus that protects the stomach from its acid. The epithelial tissues in the stomach also helps to secrete juices that are important in the digestion of food. The muscle tissues in the stomach helps in churning of food, helps in proportion of food, because for a food to move in the stomach or from the stomach to other parts of the gastrointestinal tract, it involves the rhythmic contraction of the muscle tissues in the stomach. The nervous tissues in the stomach are involved in stimulating the release of certain substances within the stomach. In other words, stomach is an organ that consists of two or more tissues that have different shapes, different functions. Another example of an organ is the liver. We also have the kidneys, the hearts, the lungs. All these are examples of organ. Now, two or more organs form systems. Form a system. Two or more organs form a system. For example, we have digestive system, we have circulatory system, nervous system, and many other systems in the body. For example, Digestive system is made up of two or more organs. What organs can you find in the digestive system? We have esophagus, we have the stomach, we have the intestines. So all these organs form the digestive system. What about the circulatory system? Circulatory system is formed by blood, heart, and the blood vessels. So the blood, the heart, and the blood vessels form the circulatory system. Nervous system is formed by the brain, spinal cord, and the nerves or neurons. You can see that each system contains two or more organs. Esophagus is an organ, intestine is an organ, blood is an organ, spinal cord is an organ. So all these organs form system. Two or more systems form human organism. That is, as we are, as a whole, we are made up of multiple systems that work in collaboration, that come together, unite to ensure that the human organism is in a perfect shape. So, to be called a human, that means you must have multiple systems that work together. If a system is absent in the body, you can't be called a human organism. Human organism consists of multiple systems that work together to ensure the normal functioning of the body.